If you want to win my vote, don't give me the ick. You know what the ick is, right? It's a term mostly used in the dating world to describe that moment when one of the people, usually the man, does something so icky that the woman cannot forgive it or forget it. Like sending a dick pic or being mean to the waitress, paying for dinner with a coupon, getting his mother to call you when you dump him, asking for sex in baby voice. Once you give her the ick, it's a wrap.
It all started with a dating term, the ick. You know it. That moment when someone does something so cringy, so off-putting, so unforgivable that it instantly kills any attraction you had. Bill Maher took that concept and slapped it right on the Democratic Party. And honestly, it fits. He looked straight into the camera and said, "If you want my vote, don't give me the ick."
I watched the evolution of both these guys. This didn't happen overnight. In 2022, before he owned Twitter, Elon tweeted this chart depicting how he felt about the liberal side having shifted so much that it left a basically liberal centrist like him now labeled a conservative. I related to the kind of mean girl shit you get from the cool kids in Wokeville when you're perceived that way. They tried real hard to cancel Rogan a few years ago, and when Elon hosted Saturday Night Live in 2021, well before he was a Trumper, some of the cast members gave him the cold shoulder for the sin of being rich.
This wasn't a joke. It was a warning, and it hit like a truth bomb. The man who once gleefully poked fun at Republicans is now unloading on the left with the kind of frustration only a betrayed supporter can muster. The audience laughed, sure, but you could feel the undercurrent of something else. Fatigue, disbelief, maybe even grief. Maher's not flipping red just yet, but make no mistake, he's sick of what his own party has become. At the center of Maher's latest rant is a growing sense that the Democrats have lost their way, and lost him in the process. They didn't just stumble into political irrelevance, they ran there, with flags waving and hashtags blazing.
But here is the dilemma for Democrats. Their young people, their key constituency, not only don't like their own civilization, they like the wrong one. They actually think Hamas is a liberation movement. They chant for the Houthis. They're chanting, "We will honor our martyrs" at Yale. They're looking for love in all the wrong countries. Someone needs to tell the kids that America is not the society where women basically have no rights, where there's zero freedom of religion and where dissent is punishable by death. Our democracy may be on life support, but we still have elections. They don't.
What once was the party of working-class grit and liberal common sense has become a TikTok echo chamber fueled by bad ideas and worse instincts. Let's rewind. Bill Maher was never a conservative. He's liberal in every classic sense. Pro-choice, pro-science, pro-free speech, but even he has limits. And those limits have been tested, shattered, and danced on by the new woke crusaders who've hijacked the party's energy.
If the thought leaders in the Democratic Party keep encouraging and not rebuking the idea that America is cringe and the people who run Gaza are great, the Democrats are doomed. Alyssa Slotkin's right. Liberals are weak and woke, especially the white ones, and they indulge all sorts of nonsense from their kids, a pattern that then continues on in the Democratic Party.
Case in point, the bizarre praise for Hamas? Yes, you heard that right. Maher didn't mince words. He called out young liberals, especially college students, for romanticizing groups like Hamas, the same group responsible for murder, kidnapping, and terror campaigns. And yet, there they were. Students at Yale chanting about martyrs, protests at rallies waving Palestinian flags while American ones got shoved aside.
Last election, it was all the gender stuff, the insistence that men can have babies and such, and now I fear that "we like the terrorists" is the new that. Liberals need to push back on the dumb ideas that come from their children. The Democrats' problem is the energy of the party's with the young and the young are with the terrorists. That's not good.
Looking for love in all the wrong countries, Maher quipped, but behind the joke was real fear. If this is what the Democratic youth stands for, what happens next? What's even worse? The silence from leadership. When a Palestinian flag was draped over an American one at an AOC and Bernie rally, the crowd cheered. The speakers said nothing, not a peep. Maher saw this not just as weak leadership, it was complicity. The adults in the room refused to act like adults. And to someone like Maher, who still believes in a version of liberalism grounded in reality, that was unforgivable. And here's the real kicker. This isn't even about foreign policy anymore. That was just the spark. The fuel? A deep rot inside the Democratic Party. A willingness to cave to online mobs, to replace real policy with viral optics, to worship slogans and ignore substance. Maher called them out, not just for being hypocrites, but for being cowards. He pointed to a long list of contradictions, claiming to fight for the working class while embracing elite donors, preaching about equity while turning a blind eye to anti-Semitism, screaming about climate change while partying with private jets. It's not just out of touch, it's offensive. And Maher's not alone in thinking that. Enter Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. Maher invoked their names for a reason. Once seen as liberal centrists, they've been shoved to the right by a culture that punishes any deviation from woke orthodoxy. Rogan dared to ask questions about vaccines. Cancelled. Musk joked about pronouns. Targeted. Maher didn't just sympathize, he saw himself in them. In 2022, Musk tweeted a political spectrum diagram showing how far the left had shifted and how people like him, once solidly center-left, now looked like conservatives by comparison. Maher related to that. Deeply, he's not changing. The party is, and it's sprinting toward an ideological cliff. But instead of course-correcting, the Democrats came up with this genius plan. Find their own Joe Rogan. No, seriously, that was the strategy. Launch a podcast. As if a podcast could undo years of cultural alienation, economic missteps, and performative nonsense. Maher mocked it with brutal clarity. Kamala Harris didn't flop because of GOP podcasters. She flopped because people are tired of being lectured by politicians who act like social media influencers. And Maher's not wrong. These days, elections aren't even about policies. They're about exhaustion. He nailed it. Voters don't choose the candidate they love. They pick the one they're less tired of. And Democrats, they're everywhere. On your phone, in your inbox, popping up like pushy salespeople who don't know when to stop. Now they're pushing AOC for 2028. Really? Socialism again? Maher didn't even try to hide his contempt. He called it intellectual incest, a bubble of recycled bad ideas paraded as revolution. Never mind the history, never mind the failures. Just slap a new label on it and pretend it's edgy. And that brings us back to Maher's ultimate warning. No, he hasn't put on a MAGA hat, but he's leaning out the window, looking at the exits. He's tired, not just of the slogans and the stupidity, but of being called the enemy just for disagreeing. And he's not alone. RFK Jr. just endorsed Trump. Read that again. A Kennedy, a pillar of Democratic legacy, ditched the party for the man they swore was evil incarnate. That's not just a political defection. That's a neon sign flashing, danger. You're losing your base. Maher's not saying Democrats should go conservative. He's saying they should go sane. Focus on things that matter. Respect nuance. Stop treating every disagreement as treason. But will they listen? Or is the party too deep in its echo chamber to hear anything at all? The ick is real. And once voters feel it, it's a wrap. So what's it going to be, Democrats? Will you wake up and listen? Or will you keep giving the ick until there's no one left to vote for you? Because here's the truth. You don't win votes by shaming people. You don't win hearts by calling everyone who questions you a bigot. And you don't win elections by handing your opponents the moral high ground. Bill Maher is giving you a final warning. This isn't satire. It's a lifeline. Grab it, or watch your coalition crumble before your eyes. And when that happens, don't say you weren't warned.